So, hi, class. We thought it would be a good idea to share with you an overview of the goals that we have for you all year long. And in sharing these goals, we believe that this is going to help you to understand what we're looking for when we talk about engagement. So, when we took a look at the surveys that you did at the end of marking period 3, it was clear that students were asking, what does it mean uh, for I to have engaged with the lesson? And um, and I thought that was a really good question. Many people were saying, "Look, I watched the video. I found it very interesting, and I really got into it. And then I got a partial engagement in in the work that I did on an exit ticket." And I understand that. I understand how a student could feel like they were doing what they felt was expected of them, and then they're not getting that engagement level or that distinguished engagement or highly engaged level. Um, so we're hoping that this is going to help you to understand what we're looking for when you're engaging. So here are a couple things to remember. First, um, it's not enough for you to just watch a video to kind of just get a feeling for what the presenter is sharing. In the same way, when you're reading something, if you're really engaged with that reading, it's not enough for you to read that reading just one time through from beginning to end, the way you would read, an essay or a short story. You want to be applying those skills that historians have when they're engaging with a source. Um, you want to be using protocols. You want to be doing close reading, close viewing, close listening. And if you're doing that, you're going to be better analyzing what the source is actually saying rather than kind of a feeling you have. All right. So remember that. That's very important. And I think it's normal now that we've been out of school for a while for us to fall back into what many historians would say. We fall back into these misconceptions we have about learning history. We oftentimes think that learning history is about learning a narrative. Mr. Bond knows the story, and I'm going to tell you the story, and you're going to memorize the facts of the story, and then it's my job to make sure that you did memorize those facts of the story. That is a way in which history was taught 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. I even taught that way for a period of time. But now we're making a move away from that. We're making a move towards teaching you habits of mind. We're teaching you skills. We are teaching you content, but the content we're teaching you is a content that is more nuanced, a little bit more complicated. The idea that there are many ways of looking at history, but if we back away and look at the big picture, there may be a better way of looking at history. And so we'll talk about this in a little bit. And then finally, dispositions, that there are certain values, certain ways of thinking about things, certain qualities that you are developing, that we're helping you develop, because as students of history, we understand that these qualities are qualities that will help us as we move forward in time. So there are certain dispositions, absolutely, that we want to share with you in the class that kind of complement the content goals, the skills, and the habits of mind. So what I want to do right now is walk through this with you rather briefly. I don't want to go too long because another feedback we got was not to be too lengthy with what we're sharing, but to let you know that when you're engaging with any lesson material we're sharing with you, if you are thinking about how you're applying either habits of mind in the work you're doing, how you're applying historical thinking skills, or how you are applying the content that we've been studying from the beginning of the year, the big picture idea, how what we're studying fits into that big picture, or how what we're studying is helping you develop a disposition. If you are aware of that and using this sheet, you should be getting engagement without any problem. And if you're not and you get feedback, our feedback will be very specific to these skills and these habits of mind and these pieces of content, knowledge, or dispositions that we're seeking to share with you. Okay, so in terms of habits of mind, remember, first and foremost, it's difficult to learn history sometimes. Um, it takes us a while sometimes to be able to kind of unpack the impressions we have and then use new information to help us understand. So that's having that growth mindset and making sure that we don't have a fixed mindset, thinking that things are kind of set in stone. That things are simple and that it's learning is easy. It's not. It's challenging. It's always challenging. So you always got to have that growth mindset. And with that in mind, remember, we have to know how our memory works, and that as we develop understandings, we sometimes have to unpack old understandings and replace them with new understandings, and that takes time, and it takes effort. Also, we need to know that when we're engaging with sources, we need to make sure we apply a protocol. And we need to read a source closely, or we need to view a source closely, or listen to a source closely. So we're going to be sharing a lot of Edpuzzles. We saw in the surveys that you really like the Edpuzzles, but we're also going to be sharing with you some other ways to kind of get information across to you in a verbal way, or even in a reading way. So make sure when you are engaging with those that you're doing so in a way that is applying a close analysis protocol. And then finally, when you're working and you get a chance to work collaboratively, make sure you're challenging each other. Make sure you're helping each other grow. Remember, we learn better when we're doing that in groups. In terms of skills, we want to see you, when we ask you to identify impressions, and then we ask you then to view a source, and then to organize the notes you're taking in that source into a form that shows us how you are using what you're learning to either affirm, extend, or challenge those impressions. We want to see you doing that. And then when we ask you to see what did you learn, what you learn should be the result of that process of using impressions to kind of pull out your biases, so that then we can kind of use the historical information, the source information, to help us to kind of clearly identify what we're learning. So make sure you're doing that. Or when we're asking you to think contextually, make sure you're doing that. You're not just going through the motions, but you're actually doing it. Or if you're looking at sources and looking things up, make sure you're considering the credibility, the accuracy, the relevance, the sufficiency of the source. If you're arguing something, especially if it's something which you feel is right, and if you're in that argument, you're kind of taking on things that maybe even things that we're sharing with you, make sure you're seeking to corroborate yourself. Don't just find one source, or especially just your own impression. Make sure you're thinking about how you can find information that is that compares with what you think is true, or is supporting what you think is true. That's called corroboration. And then finally, make sure that when you're working on, especially end of a lesson information where you're sharing out what you're learning, make sure that you're really thinking about what is most important. What's the main idea? What are the pieces of information that are supporting what you've learned? Because that is what good writing is made up of. It's what good speaking and presenting digitally is made up of. Make sure that you really understand that. Don't just kind of give a quick answer. Give a thoughtful, well-structured answer. All right? And then always remember, we're studying the modern revolution. So we're studying these 7 interconnected stages that make up the last 500 years of history. But that 500 years of history is a part of a larger history that we call the Anthropocene. It's also called the age of human beings, or the age of Homo sapiens, kind of designated by this kind of picture up here, that we're at the pinnacle of the Anthropocene, where we have internal combustion engines and advanced farming, and we have really kind of, we're at the top of history. But that history is a part of a long, much bigger period of time, and we need to be aware of that as we study. And then we need to realize that as human beings, we need to weave this into our historical understanding, because then it helps us to have a bigger history, a bigger picture of what's going on, which might help us to deal with the challenges we have. And then the dispositions, valuing equality, remembering that if you're having a difficult time with things and you're down, We understand that. That's why we always give you more time. That's why we're there to support you. Emotions are our allies, not our enemy. This is not only an important thing to learn in class, but it's an important thing to learn in history. So remember that. Valuing constitutional and democratic systems. The last 200 years has seen immense improvement because of constitutional democratic systems that we've developed. Because of all of this enlightenment that we've gone through and this struggle that we've gone through to create fair and just forms of government. These are very important dispositions that we want to make sure that we get across to you. And then generational challenges. We have significant challenges right now because of industrial farming and manufacturing, and because of how we've been using fossil fuels. We also have issues that relate to the way in which we see each other racially, in terms of class designations, or the concept of gender, which we're going to clearly get into in the final 2 months together. And then finally, remember, adapting to change is a process. And although change happens very rapidly in the world, it's happening in exponential ways in these exponential times. Human beings are not as quick to change. So we have to be patient with ourselves. We have to be willing to be vulnerable and have that growth mindset, because we're human beings, we're not machines. And so the more we can kind of jive with that, the more I think we can be better at dealing with making changes that are going to be healthy changes moving forward. Okay, so these are all of the things that we're looking for from you as you're working on your learning activities. We hope this helps you. Remember, if you're having a hard time with these, or if we just see you kind of going through the motions, you may find yourself being assessed as partially engaged or casually engaged, and then we'll give you feedback. Pay attention to that feedback, and then go back to this and use this sheet, even use this video, hopefully to help you to understand what we're looking for as you engage with the lessons. Okay? So hope this didn't end up being too long. Thank you for your time, and bye now.